Okay, hello, Thunderfoot and everybody. How's it going? Thunderfoot, I hope your arms are doing better. I hope you did some stretching. That was a lot of reaching you were just doing. They must be sore. But before I address you and the wonderful videos you did on me, I'd like to talk to the fans first. For those of you who don't know, Thunderfoot took to attacking me on his channel with a couple of videos recently and calling me the worst reporter on earth because I said this.
This is what Antifa is. This is what the anti-Trump movement is.
So, I could just sit here and I could ignore the videos Thunderfoot did about me because they would probably blow over, they'd disappear, and people would forget about it entirely, quite frankly, eventually. But I won't, because I don't think that's the right thing to do. I think the right thing to do is to say that in that part of the video, I most definitely misspoke. And I want to say it loud and clear to the camera that I misspoke. Plain and simple fact. And as someone who has a large following like I do, it's my job to make sure my commentary is honest and accurate. And I intend to keep pursuing that sort of commentary and to do better, to ensure that I do better and don't make mistakes like that next time. Now, I don't think this was a particularly terrible or just life-ruining, career-ruining mistake. I think most reasonable people with two brain cells to rub together could tell that obviously when I say this is what anti-Trump people look like, I would know that I'm not talking about every single freaking one. However, I want people to know that when I mess up or when I'm wrong about something, I am willing to admit that I'm wrong. In fact, I'm happy to admit that I'm wrong because I quite frankly don't think you should trust anyone who never admits they are wrong. It means they put their ego and pride before fact and truth, and I just don't have time for people like that, and I don't think you should have time for people like that either. I wouldn't expect you to. Now, if you want to know what I meant to imply or say when I misspoke, what I meant was basically that much of the anti-Trump movement has become simply vitriolic and hateful rather than a group of people that are putting forward coherent arguments. And the rioters and protesters, whatever you want to call them, are definitely a part of the anti-Trump movement. They have said so. They are admittedly so a part of this movement. And their actions are well empowered even by peaceful protesters who only attended the Women's March or were standing peacefully by. And the reason I would say that is because these people that were attending the Women's March and other marches that were quote-unquote peaceful were holding signs calling Trump a fascist and a Nazi and slandering him. And how do people respond to fascists and Nazis? Well, they respond with violence and the utmost resistance. So obviously the Black Bloc and these protesters are not all anti-Trump supporters, but the violence that erupted that day was most definitely a part of the anti-Trump movement and deserved to be treated as such. Now that that's out of the way, I want to address the rest of Thunderfoot's videos, because the rest of it was some of the most piss-poor commentary I have seen in my entire life. The worst part, I think, about this entire thing that Thunderfoot was trying to do is he tries to go into situations portraying himself as neutral. He has no bias. He has no preconceived notions when he goes into situations. He's your radical centrist, as they say. Which I think if you watch the videos that he made, it is quite evidently untrue. Thunderfoot, you're a leftist, and everyone knows it, and you go into political arguments from a leftist point of view. And I don't care, you can do that, that's fine. I am quite admittedly right-wing. I tell people I'm right-wing, and everyone knows it. It's just really silly to see people like yourself going out there and pretending to be nonpartisan when you are. And Thunderfoot, you quite clearly went into these videos that you did on me with an agenda of character assassination and vehement defense of the left. Yeah, just look at the titles. Lauren Southern is dishonest. Lauren Southern is
dumbest reporter ever.
Come on, dude. You did not go into this with your old nonpartisan cap on. Give me a fucking break. Now, you were happy to make these claims about me being dishonest and make plenty of assumptions about what went down in DC, but you still had no interest in having a discussion with me. I attempted to contact Thunderfoot on Twitter, as many of you saw. I attempted to contact him on DM. No reply, nothing. It's been a while, still waiting on a reply. So Now, I think the reason that Thunderfoot is not replying to me is because he knows, and I know, that he only had 1 point in both of his videos. Just one. A point that I am happy to concede on and have done so publicly on social media and at the beginning of this video. But instead of focusing on that 1 point and just being like, hey, Lauren, why'd you do that? Why did you exaggerate this one part of the video? And focusing on that one strong point he had, Thunderfoot, you let the snide and malicious jackass side of you get the best. What happened from that is you went on to make some wild conspiracy theories and pretty insane assertions that even people who are admittedly your fans were saying, hey man, I think you're reaching a bit here. I think you're going a bit far with that. And let's jump into some of those.
So this is Lauren Southern, and she's going to show us how a real journalist functions, how a alt-right journalist functions, by covering this anti-Trump rally and just how violent it was.
So, you started this video by calling me an alt-right journalist. Ooh, the leader of the alt-right, Lauren Southern. This is already a really, really bad start, Thunderfoot. You show a thorough misunderstanding of political ideologies from the very beginning of your video and throughout it. While I certainly have crossover with the alt-right on a decent amount of subjects, I don't focus on white identity as one of my main topics. It's not something I do. And because of this, most of the alt-right do not refer to me as alt-right. I get called right-wing, I get called alt-light, sure, but many people on the alt-right would find your description of me inaccurate and laughable, to be quite frank. But I will assume that you misspoke or you just didn't understand this. Or I can make a million clickbait titles of you. Dishonest Thunderfoot. Thunderfoot is a liar. Thunderfoot has no idea what he's talking about. Worst YouTuber ever. No. Maybe next time, but let's move on to your bigger focuses in this video.
Well, they're smashing windows and attacking people. That is the sign he has. How did we let hate win? No, we conquered your hate and oppression of the American people.
Yeah, there's just one tiny tinsy problem with this, Lauren. They're anarchists.
This is what the anti-Trump movement is.
Calling anarchists an anti-Trump rally is kind of like calling atheists anti-Christians. I mean, I wouldn't want to tell someone holding a microphone how to be a reporter. But the first giveaway that they're anarchists is that they're all holding anarchist flags. You know, clue?
Okay, so apparently they're bulking up and they're going to charge this police line right over here.
Yes, apparently anarchists have flags now. Just like this anti-Trump rally, or this anti-Trump rally, or this one, and going back well over a decade. Seriously, you didn't notice that protest that just marched past you were all carrying giant anarchist flags, or you just didn't see that as an important aspect of this story. No, you were too keen to say this was what the anti-Trump movement was. I mean, really, if I wanted to be as honest as Lauren Southern here, as responsible in my reporting, I would say that this was a pro-Trump protest. Because look, they're spraying a Trump slogan on the cars before they smash and burn them.
Thunderfoot, I wasn't trying to ignore or hide that there were anarchists within this group. I'm happy to admit it. Yes, there were anarchists within the group. There was no conspiracy here. The incident was a coalition of Black Bloc, communists, Antifa, and people who call themselves anarchists. And I've said this in multiple interviews that I've done about the DC situation. There was no huge conspiracy. I was simply referring to them as anti-Trump because this was a large coalition of different groups that had gotten together to protest Trump. Here's a clip you conveniently didn't include in your video.
Consider this chaos. They're smashing windows and cars.
Think about it. And Malcolm X says an unjust law is no law at all. If we got a president that won't follow the law, why should we?
You guys aren't following the law, and he is following the law. He was elected Democratic.
Well, he lost the popular vote.
Now, this could be your ignorance, or you could be intentionally trying to cover it up, but when you point to the anarchist flag here, you neglect to mention that this is not simply an anarchist flag. It is an anarcho-communist flag. Here's a nice chart for you in case you need it. There are all different sorts of anarchists. They are on a spectrum, kind of like you, Thunderfoot, so you gotta pay attention to that. Sargon did a great video talking about this as well that you can go and check out. No matter how much you want to deny it, these are left-wing protesters. not just a bunch of anarchists. I mean, just listen to this shit.
Pick up your fallen comrade!
Pick up your fallen comrade. They're LARPing as communists in front of the camera. So just let me reiterate, these were not a group of just anarchists that would just protest absolutely anyone. These are very, very left-wing. It was a very left-wing group of people, with anarchists among it, most of them anarcho-communists, and they were protesting a very specific person, and they had a very specific purpose for being out that day. I wonder who that person could be. No one can figure it out, Thunderfoot.
Not my president! Not my president!
Now, in your second video on me, you provide proof that these are just anarchists that would protest anyone, and they're not just going after a specific political ideology or a specific political person. And the proof you refer to is a protest during Obama's inauguration.
It really is this simple. Imagine, just for a second, total hypothetical, that the anarchists showed up to Obama's inauguration. And it's a complete hypothetical because we know this would never happen, right? And they start marching under an anarchist flag. And, well, actually, I've got news for you. Yes, I do remember it because it happened. And not only is it here reported on Breitbart, there's even a nice video of it too.
Folks, so we're here in Washington, D.C., and a Black Bloc march has kicked off.
And yes, the Black Bloc did show up to Obama's inauguration, and they destroyed the streets, attacked cops, they were burning cars, punching people in the face, they were at a street war with police, they were setting things on fire. It was insane. Except that didn't happen. The Obama inauguration protest consisted of around 80 to 100 people calling themselves anarchists, and they were walking through the street, and it was during, I think this is important, it was during Obama's second term, his second swearing in, not his first, so they actually gave him a shot, and there were only 3 areas of damage, 3 locations of damage, and 1 arrest made. You're really going to compare that to a situation where there were over 200 arrests made, where there were street battles going on with police, and protesters were pulling bricks from the median in the ground, smashing them and hurling them at people's faces, where there were 6 cops injured, including 3 that were hit by those bricks, among other things, where the protests swelled to over 1,000 people, and where they were chanting, "Put pigs in the ground," and wielding crowbars and punching Trump supporters. You're really going to pretend that these anarchist Black Bloc act the same way towards Trump as they do Obama? That's fucking rich. That is just, like, it's unreal. These were not just some neutral anarchist moron. These were far left anti-Trump rioters. Eleanor Goldfield, who helped organize the Disrupt J20 protest, stated that their goal was to show Trump and his supporters that they won't be silent. The sign they were holding at the front of this march was one that said, "Make racists afraid again." Like, I'm sorry, I just don't think they would be holding that sign at the front of an anti-Obama protest. And when they were getting arrested, they held up that sign as high as they could in the crowd. And the people around them, peaceful protesters that were not part of the Black Bloc, were cheering them on and chanting, "Let them go," to the police after they had destroyed the freaking streets. It was unreal. These people get unreal support from mainstream and peaceful protesters. So when I say this kind of violence and chaos wouldn't happen with a left-wing president and it wouldn't be supported, I think the proof speaks for itself. I saw more damage done in 5 minutes at the anti-Trump riots than were done at the entire Obama riots, if you can even call them that. Like, the fact that you're trying to compare these two things is just so insane and disingenuous to me. One of my favorite parts of your videos is where you imply that I do not need security, that I'm exaggerating the dangers, and even better, that the people there have no idea who I am, and I'm just kind of pretending that anarchists know who I am and I'm in danger.
I know that they're anarchists because they're being followed around by a group of photographers going around specifically to photograph them smashing up stuff, because it makes good news. And of course, a lot of them are pretending that it's a very dangerous place to be.
Time before, oh my God, they've opened fire. All right, looks like things are getting very heated here. This is not a safe place to be. And now sports.
Despite the fact that anarchists are notorious for smashing up property and not so much for actually hurting bystanders. I mean, honestly, I've been in Prague for New Year.
Now, I've never been the one to go to these events and demand security and say, I need security now or I'm not going. That's not my personality. In fact, security is kind of pushed on me by my work. After I've gone to protest after protest and gotten shoved or grabbed,
Take a pressure. Good smile on your bitch. What you want?
my work and followers both said, this is enough. You shouldn't have to fear for yourself while you're doing your job. You should be able to feel safe at your job. And Rebel cares about me, and so do my fans, and they are happy to help with security and my safety. There were flashbangs flying in the street that would permanently damage your hearing.
Oh, shit! Oh my god! Oh, fuck! Ah!
If you were in the wrong spot at the wrong time, you were going to get mace in your face.
They were getting pepper sprayed very severely right there.
I was standing right behind there where that happened. There were rocks flying, and if you didn't run fast enough to keep up with the protesters, you were going to get caught by a line of police using batons.
Tanks deployed here in Washington, D.C. They got the industrial camps completely coming up behind us. Oh, shit. Watch out, guys. Ah!
Like, give me a break, Thunderf00t. I wasn't exaggerating this. It's perfectly fine and dandy and peaceful to do commentary from your bedroom, but when you're among a bunch of protesters that are punching people, setting things on fire and smashing windows, it's a little different. You had Richard Spencer getting punched in the face. You had batteries being thrown at deplorable attendees. My friend was on the ground yelling as mace was in his eyes, and he was having vinegar and milk poured on his face. It was just insanity. I got shoved right after I dismissed my security, and there were multiple journalists there that got caught in the protest kettle that I just barely made it out of. And now they're being charged with felonies. They're being charged with rioting. It's crazy. I was just on the phone with a group dedicated to protecting journalists earlier, and they were asking me in shock how I managed to get out of that kettle and without getting maced or shoved by police. And I had to pretend I was pregnant. My security had to yell, "She's pregnant," to get me out of there. I mean, to pretend I was in some sort of Zen situation where I was just faking being rattled is just so insane. I'd like to see you try to do perfectly formulated commentary while you've got cops chasing you with batons and mace. I'd love to see that, dude. I mean, you're just such a dumbass on this issue. It is unreal. Like, give me a break.
Leaving. I was in the middle of a group of people who had specifically put me on a list as a target of their deplorable. Seriously, Lauren, no one there had the slightest clue who you were. No one in that entire video recognized you.
And as for people not knowing who I am there, well, Antifa has put me on multiple lists on their websites, along with the End Fascism DC page or whatever it was. These were the people that were attending that protest, and they sure as hell knew who I was when I was in England and they were shoving me around.
You freaking racists! Racist! Scum! Racist! Racist! Scum! Racist scum! Racist scum!
And even if for some reason not a single person read any of these pages that they posted on their Antifa websites, then they sure as hell knew who my friends were, because they were screeching, "Fuck you, Cassandra Fairbanks," when I was standing beside her, and coming up to me and elbowing me. You can feel free to read about that in IB Times right here. You're either like an utter moron, or you let your snide character assassination attempt get in the way of your reason here when you were talking about my security and safety and this whole situation. It's just, the comments you made on that were ridiculous, and no one is inaccurate to say you were reaching. You were reaching very, very hard. With both videos, I just want to sum this up kind of briefly. Like most conspiracy theorists, the answer is a lot simpler than they like to make it appear. And you, Thunderf00t, are a conspiracy theorist on this whole video, because you seem to believe that I had some giant agenda to make anarchists into anti-Trump protesters and deny the existence of anarchism there. No. there were people that called themselves anarchists there, of course, among other groups. I literally have no problem saying that, and I would have said it in the video had I thought about it. It was a crazy situation. I thought the more evident thing was anti-Trump protesters than to say, and that group is an anarchist, and that one's Black Bloc, and that one's Antifa. I was anti-Trump. That's what they were all unified there for. That was what I was going to say. I mean, the crux of the story was I saw people there with anti-Trump signs. They were chanting against Trump, and they were rioting on Trump's inauguration day. So I think I reported exactly what I saw, and that was anti-Trump protesters, and I don't think it was crazy for me to say that. Now, you made a lot of assumptions beyond that about my agenda that were just entirely untrue, but you were more interested in clicks and character assassination than having a conversation with me, which I would have loved to have with you, Thunderfoot, but never got a reply. I was reporting what I was seeing, and yeah, I misspoke at one part. I have no problem admitting that I misspoke at one part. And I plan on improving and not doing that again. But other than that, you have nothing. You have nothing that was legitimate criticism, in my opinion. I will admit when I've been called out or when I'm wrong, as I did at the beginning of this video, but the rest of your video was just nonsense. Sorry, Thunderfoot, there's nothing else to it. I was just reporting what I saw. You're reaching, man. And you seem to be a little obsessed with the editing process as well. I'll let you know right now, I wasn't even there for editing. I went out to go get footage of the burning limo and of bricks being thrown at cops' faces. And I just told my video guy and editor, I was just like, pick some of the best parts. Maybe just even upload it raw, whatever. Throw them up on the website. Just get it up fast so people know what's going on right now. And I mean, he couldn't care less whether Trump or Hillary won. He's not sitting there trying to make deceitful editing. I mean, if anything looked like deceitful editing, he was probably just grabbing a clip to throw over top an area where the battery of the camera died or where there was an audio issue. I mean, it's not some grand conspiracy, Thunderfoot. There were many left-wingers rioting in the streets. That's just a fact. And there were many left-wingers that acted violent around Trump's inauguration and around the entire election. That is just a fact. I mean, and what's even crazier is there were even more peaceful people that cheered them on. There were mainstream journalists that were cheering on the Black Bloc. I mean, that's what I find the really insane part. But yeah, it's the truth. This was an anti-Trump riot. This was a left-wing riot. That's just a fact, Thunderfoot. And I've admitted where I messed up. So the real question is, will you admit where you messed up, or will you put your ego and pride ahead of the facts?